Okay, good morning, everyone. Again, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name's Karen Burnell Ruff, and I am with the Arc of the Ozarks. And for some that may be on that's not familiar, the Arc is a non-for-profit organization that provides a variety of services and supports for individuals with disabilities to help support them be active and valued members of our communities. We provide services and supports in Springfield, Monette, Joplin, and Kansas City and the surrounding counties. We're here to be a resource to the community. So reach out to us and we're happy to provide information and link and connect you to resources to help with any disability related need. If we can help in any way, don't hesitate to give us a call. Again, thank you all for being here today. And on behalf of the ARC, I would like to give a shout out and thank you to Treasurer Fitzpatrick and his team and Thomas Hatch from the Ohio Stable Account Program for working with us to provide this workshop today. We have just a few housekeeping items. Please just remember to stay muted throughout the program. And if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to send them via the chat function. The chat function is located on the right of your sidebar on your screen. We'll do our best to answer the questions during the presentation or at the end during the Q&A. And now just a little bit about our presenters. Thomas Hatch is the operations manager for the Stable Account Program in Ohio. Missouri partners with Stable to administer the program. He began his career as a personal finance planner and then later moved to Ohio to transition into higher education, where he spent 17 years administering financial programs for Ohio State University. Thomas joined the Ohio's treasurer office in August of 2017 to assist with the rapid expansion of their Stable Account program. And welcome, Thomas. And before we get to Thomas, though, I would like to let you know that we're going to hear from Missouri State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick. Treasurer Fitzpatrick was sworn in 2019 and was elected to full term in 2020. As treasurer, he oversees the MOABLE program. Under his leadership, the program has more than doubled in size, but I am sure that he will say there's still plenty of work to be done on this. With that, I welcome you, Treasurer Fitzpatrick.
Thank you. It's good to be with you. Sorry, I don't know. Every time I get like on one of these new meeting applications, I have to kind of relearn how to use it because I feel like I've been using Zoom a lot lately. Here we are with WebEx. Well, anyway, it's good to be with you guys. I always enjoy getting together and talking about ABLE accounts because they really have such a positive impact on the lives of people with disabilities. I actually had a call from somebody I know from back home yesterday with questions about an ABLE account for their child. And I was talking to him for a little while, and I said, we actually are doing a presentation on ABLE tomorrow with Arc of the Ozarks. So we sent her the meeting link, and I think she probably joined as well. So we always get interest from ABLE or about ABLE accounts from people. They're still pretty new, and so there's a lot of people who are still even 4 or 5 years into this program since Congress passed it. There's still people who are learning what it is and understanding the benefits of it. So I'll just kind of jump in. And does Matt have the PowerPoint up? Okay. So we'll go ahead and go to the first slide. So essentially, what is an ABLE account? I think that's the main question. A lot of people want, the first thing that people want answers to. So ABLE was created, the ABLE Act was passed by the federal government or Congress in 2014 to create a saving and investment account for individuals who are living with disabilities, similar to like how a 529 account would be used for families who are saving for higher education needs for their kids. An ABLE account can be used to save for a child with a disability, or if that individual with a disability is an adult and is working, it can be used as an account for that individual to save for themselves with certain tax benefits and with certain protections from means testing for benefits like SSI and Medicaid. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Matt. There you go. So I mentioned a 529 account, but ABLE's function differently than a 529 account. 529s are more used as a saving and investment tool, exclusively. ABLE accounts are more used as a way to provide that savings option if that's the kind of phase of life you might be in, whether you're saving for your child, like I said, or if the adult with a disability is in a position to save for themselves. But it also can work more like a checking account. So we have a loadable debit card associated with our account that you can basically, it ties back to the account. You can load money onto that card from the account, but you don't have an opportunity to overdraft that card. There'll be a little more discussion about that later. So it's the debit card is not exactly tied to the account. It's just attached to the account when you can load money from your account onto the card. And it also kind of provides some functions of like some functions that a special need trust would provide in terms of means testing protection. The money in an ABLE account is protected from means testing up to $100,000. So if you have more than $100,000, it's a countable asset for benefits like Medicaid and SSI. But if you have less than $100,000 in that account, it does not count towards that means testing calculation in terms of, do you have too many assets to qualify for those programs. So kind of some benefits of the mobile account. Number one, the account is owned by the individual living with the disability. So the account is always going to be in the name of that person that qualifies to have the account. Whereas like a 529 account, those accounts are generally in the name of the parent or the person who opens the account to start saving for a particular beneficiary. In this case, the beneficiary of the account is also the owner of the account, and that's the individual with a disability who qualifies for the account. ABLE accounts can create financial independence for these individuals that they've never had before. People who've relied on Medicaid or SSI have pretty much been told that they can't have more than $2,000 in assets their whole lives. And ABLE, so that causes people to either spend money that they don't need to spend unnecessarily, or it causes them to, try to, get around that rule in some other way. And so having an ABLE account, allowing individuals to have assets in an account that they can see up to $100,000, it really changes, people's lives, having that opportunity to save that way. It also can eliminate spend down requirements. The tax benefits, I talked a little bit about that. So an ABLE account is treated a lot like what you would consider like a Roth IRA. The main difference between an ABLE account and a Roth IRA, or main differences I should say, is with an ABLE account, you actually qualify for a state tax deduction for your contributions to an ABLE account. And that tax deduction goes to whoever is making the contribution. So if it's a parent that's making a contribution to an ABLE account for their child, then that parent would get the tax deduction. If it's a grandparent, the grandparent would get the tax deduction. And filers are eligible to receive a state tax deduction of up to $16,000 a year if you're filing jointly, and up to $8,000 per year if you're a single filer. As you can see from this slide here, Missouri treats ABLE accounts very favorably compared to states in terms of what the state tax deduction is. When the law was passed in 2015 or 16 in the Missouri legislature, I was in the legislature at the time and voted in favor of this bill to create MOABLE, the Missouri ABLE account program. We treated our state tax deduction the same way as we treat our 529 plan tax deduction. So we wanted people saving in an ABLE account to have the same opportunities from a tax advantage standpoint as people who are saving on a 529 account for their kids. So this is the same as that. 529 accounts get $8,000 for single filers, $16,000 for joint filers. And so we did the same thing with ABLE accounts. So it works a lot like a Roth IRA in that the money going into the account is after-tax money. So you're making contributions of after-tax money to the account, and you get that state tax deduction, which you don't get with the Roth IRA. But the money in the account, if you do invest it and leave it in that account, it grows tax-free. So you're not going to pay income tax on any earnings in the account. or when I say you, I mean the owner of the account will not pay any income tax on the earnings in that account, so long as when the money is withdrawn, it's used for a qualified expense, which has to be related to the disability. And there's a slide later on, and you'll have an opportunity to see kind of what is considered qualified disability expense. And I think what you'll find is it's a very broad definition, and that most things would fit into the definition of a disability expense, because it essentially just has to support the quality of life of, the independence of, or contribute to the care of the individual with a disability. So eligibility is one big question. How do you qualify for an ABLE account, or to have an ABLE account? The first thing, and this is something that we're trying to get changed in Congress, working with other state treasurers who run the ABLE program, is that the individual living with a disability, the onset of that disability had to have occurred prior to the age of 26. So, there's a lot of people who become disabled in some age of 26. Obviously, many people are born with their disability, but there are also people that become disabled at 26. One large group of people that comes to mind is we have servicemen and women that have served in the military that developed a disability after they turned 26. And currently under federal law, they're not eligible to participate in the ABLE program. And so we have a piece of legislation we're supporting as the Association of State Treasurers in Congress, that is called the Able Age Adjustment Act, that would raise that 26-year-old limit from 26 to 40. But you have to have a disability that has occurred prior to the age of 26, plus just one of the following items. So you have to be eligible to receive SSI or SSDI due to a disability, and keyword there is eligible to receive. It's not, you don't actually have to be receiving those benefits, but if you're eligible to receive, that alone will qualify you for ABLE, as long as your disability occurred prior to the age of 26. Or you have to have a condition that's listed on SSA's list of compassionate allowances conditions. So they have a Social Security Administration as a list of conditions that would allow you to qualify. Or you have to self-certify that you have a disability that causes a marked or severe functional limitation. So any of those three options are acceptable for qualifying for an ABLE account. If you were to self-certify, and here's this slide here, like I said, you would need a diagnosis of physical or mental impairment that causes marked or severe functional limitations. The condition that you would have to last, or at least be expected to last, for at least a year. And you don't need a written diagnosis to self-certify, but you need to have one on hand in the event that you were, to be audited about, qualifying for this account. So we're here to help, and we have staff in the Treasurer's Office in Missouri that work on the ABLE program. One of the big things we've worked on lately is getting employers to offer payroll deduction direct deposits to their employees to ABLE accounts, like they do for 401ks or IRA accounts or other type retirement vehicles. And we've had some success getting employers signed up to offer that to their employees. The very first employer we had sign up was Cox Health in Springfield. So a very large employer in Springfield. I believe Missouri State's on the list. I'm not sure of that. Somebody can message me if I was wrong about that. But we have, multiple employers. If you work at a company and are interested in your employer offering you the option of have money just held out of your check and contributed straight to an ABLE account, please, reach out to us. We're happy to approach your employer about that on your behalf. Or if you want to talk to your employer about that and have them contact us, we're happy to do that as well. But with that, I think the next part of the presentation is with Thomas. So we're in partnership with we're in a consortium in order to pool the assets of these plans when they started, and to lower the collective fees that have to be charged to the account owners, which are not a lot of money, but we wanted to make them as little as possible. We pooled our resources together with Ohio and 11 other states in addition to Ohio, so that we could have a larger asset base from which to manage these accounts, which keeps the fees lower for everybody else. So Ohio runs many of the administrative aspects of the ABLE program that we are a part of, and so Thomas Hatch is with stable accounts out of Ohio, and he will be taking it from here. He'll be taking it from here to continue the presentation. I saw one question from the chat. So owners of the account can also get a tax. So the question is, so owners of the account can also get a tax deduction if they add money themselves, or just as someone outside of the owner can get the deduction. So the answer to that question is whoever is contributing the money gets the deduction, whether it's the owner or some other contributor. Thomas can correct me if I'm wrong about that, or add any kind of clarification to that. But whoever the contributor is, whether it's the owner or whether it's the some other person makes a contribution, that is the person that can get a tax deduction. Thomas, is that sound right to you?
That is correct, Treasurer. Yes.
Okay. And there'll be plenty of opportunity for more Q&A at the end of the presentation from Thomas. I appreciate you guys taking the time. If we can ever be of help in the Treasurer's office, please don't hesitate to contact us. And thanks for taking the time to get on today. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Thomas.
All right, thank you, Treasurer Fitzpatrick. It's great to be on, and I'm also trying to see, I use these dual screens, so I'm trying to see if you're seeing the right screen of mine here. I believe you are, if everyone can see the main slide versus my other slideshow. But yes, I'm grateful to be on with everybody this morning. One of the things that I wanted to mention, first of all, about the MoAble program, a great group of individuals there in the Treasurer's office to work with. Your state was one of the first partners to join sort of our consortium or group, as Treasurer Fitzpatrick mentioned. And I don't oftentimes get a chance or opportunity to meet many of the individuals face to face necessarily in some of these state programs. But I have met your treasurer. I have met his team. We were able to do that on a visit once. And because of that, have great respect for the team there and all the hard work and effort they're putting in. And as he mentioned, we have 11 other partners. We actually are going to be having a 12th join here the 1st of September. And I'll brag a little bit on your state that out of those 11 partners, you have the largest program of them all as far as a number of account holders and individuals in your state using these accounts. So done a great job over the years, and I'm here to wanting to help explain then how to get enrolled in the account. So all right, and Brandon's telling me, I'm going to stop sharing for a second and see if I can share it appropriately here. Okay, I think this is the one that I need. All right, there we go. So what I'm going to talk about today is how to enroll in an account. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll understand that it's pretty simple. Only 6 major steps, and then there can be a few beyond that. But most people, it takes less than 20 minutes, I'd say, maybe even 10 minutes or so. And most oftentimes people start on this page, which is the home page for the MoAble website. You'll see at the very top of the screen, www.moable.com is the landing page for your state's marketing site, and I've highlighted in a red border there at the top and over to the left side 2 different buttons that can be used to click on to go to the site in which you would enroll. We are with a new program manager, and so if some are familiar with our old program manager, there's going to be some differences here. So this is the first page that you get to when you look at enrolling in an account. not much to do here other than to put in an email address. And then you'll have two other additional boxes that they want you to check before you can get started. One of those is just suggesting that you have read and accepted the terms of the plan disclosure statement for the program. There's a link there that will take you out to that document. Honestly, the document's 80 some odd pages long, so I wouldn't expect that everyone's necessarily going to read the whole entire thing prior to enrolling, but that's the governing document that explains all the nuances of the plan. So I assume, like most of us, when we come to these boxes, we'll probably just check it off to move to the next step, but it would be good at times to refer back to that if you have any specific questions. There's also another one that you're agreeing to somedays site terms of use and privacy policy and so forth. Someday is the manager that we're using. They're actually a subsidiary, a wholly owned subsidiary of the Bank of New York Mellon, but they go by the name Someday. I'll also point out too, just as another additional feature here, if you'll see at the bottom right corner of the screen, you'll see kind of a gray box that says leave a message. That's actually our live chat feature. So if while you're enrolling you have questions, you can click on that. Now, the screenshot that I have here just says leave a message because in hours that the customer service desk is not available, or if that chat feature is completely full and there's no other individuals available to attend it at that moment, you can leave a message. But the text in that box would actually change to chat with us, if somebody's available, and you could use that to get directly to a representative that can help you if you have questions in the enrollment process. So once you get past this opening screen, we'll come to our first screen. Again, I apologize for the clarity on some of these. When you're trying to take screenshots of things and then put them into presentations, you lose a little bit of the integrity there. You'll see at the top right a tracker. So we're on step 1 of step 6, and that shows you that there's 6 steps into this particular process. And we're just looking at the first step of those, and as you go along, each one will then progress in the tracker. I've kind of made a list to the left here in more visible text of things that are required. And this example that we're going to use, we're going to be looking at a case of an individual, let's say a parent or a guardian or somebody of that nature, an authorized legal representative, opening the account for a beneficiary. So that's the steps that we're going to be looking at. So the first screen is going to actually ask to tell us about the beneficiary. So the first question is, are you the beneficiary? A simple yes or no. An individual can manage the account themselves if they have the ability to do so. So if they were wanting to do that, then they would mark yes here, I am the beneficiary. And then actually the next screen we're going to go to would be skipped for them, and they would just go on and continue in the registration process. In this case, because we're doing an example with a representative, we'll say no, I'm not the beneficiary, and then but proceed to input the beneficiary's information. So you'll have their name, their social security number, their date of birth. They even have a box of how the individual wants to identify, he, she, his, hers, that kind of thing. Residential address. And I haven't shown you the whole screen because I tried to blow it up to let you see it a little bit better. But for residential address, an interesting note here is that no PO boxes or military addresses are accepted at this point in time. That we'll get to that later when you have where you want like a mailing address. But for the residential address, we want it something permanent that we can have a record of. And so it's required to not be a PO box or military address at that point in time. There is also a button to select at the bottom of this page. It's not shown here, where you can self-identify as a veteran if that pertains to you or to the beneficiary. Getting back to what Treasurer Fitzpatrick had said, we're very interested in collecting this data because then it helps us when we make our case to Congress to try to get that age adjusted to show how many veterans we're already serving and the need for having that age increased to be able to serve more of them. So it's an optional question there, but if you would like to self-identify if that applies, then you have the option to do so. After filling in all of the beneficiary's information, you go to the next step, which is the authorized legal representative. You'll hear me sometimes say ALR, that's the acronym we use for authorized legal representative. So this would be the individual who is going to manage the account on behalf of the beneficiary. I do want to stop here though and say, again, getting back to a note that Treasurer Fitzpatrick had made, if there's anybody on the call that represents or is from an entity or organization or group in which you as an organization would like to manage accounts on behalf of beneficiaries that you serve and do it kind of in a consolidated, easy to operate fashion, we have a separate process that we call the entity authorized legal representative process. So that would be something after a presentation like this, we could connect with you individually and talk more about if that's something you're interested in. We have many organizations that do that. In fact, again, with Karen on the phone here with the ARC of the Ozarks, that could be, as an example, an organization that if they had the authority to do so and the aptitude to do so, they could open up and manage accounts on the behalf of many beneficiaries. So that's a little bit different of a process. We do have that process in place, and it's a really good one. But here we're just focusing on an individual who's going to be managing, and this could be one account, two accounts, however many that they are authorized to do. So similar to the last slide, you're going to put in your name, first and last name, social security number, date of birth, phone number. You can have an alternate phone number as an option if you wanted to put a different one there, how you identify, and then your residential address. If you happen to be in the same residence as the beneficiary, let's say it's a mother-child or father-child relationship, then you can click a box and it will just autofill the same address that you put in the prior information for the beneficiary. Again, no PO boxes or military addresses at this point. There is one too, I'm not showing this one on the screen, where at the end of this, it actually asks for employment information. Some people might find this to be a little bit strange, like, are you employed, yes or no? And then also the nature of your employment. This is actually something that is used on the back end as kind of like a know your customer type thing, and actually plays into potentially identifying, risks of account holders. So the bank uses that information to sort of establish, are there some professions or some types of things that are, more of a risk than others, and that goes into their know your customer information that they use for ID verification. So once you fill in all of that information, that was step 2, we go on to step 3. And this is eligibility information. Again, Treasurer Fitzpatrick covered this well in the introduction. So on the first one here, this one is much harder to see, so I'll have to more describe it. The first one is eligibility as previously described. The first selection is eligible for SSI. The second selection is eligible to receive SSDI. And then the third one is a self-certification. So that would be one which maybe you don't qualify under the SSI or SSDI, but you have a medical physician that can vouch for your disability, something like that, where you're self-certifying, those compassionate service allowances that the Social Security Administration has. You qualify under one of those. So you're self-certifying that I do have this disability. It does qualify me for the account. There is actually a link here to a physician form, if that's something that would be helpful, that you can take into a physician and just have them fill out and say, yes, I acknowledge that this person has, said disability and so forth. So one of those 3 options needs to be checked. And then the next one is disability, like a diagnosis code. So, for most, if you are familiar with sort of the standards in the industry, we have these disability codes. I didn't write next to these names on the list the code number, but I think they're actually in order from 1 to 7. So they're listed there: developmental disorder, intellectual, psychiatric, nervous, congenital, and respiratory, and then other. So you just ask to select one of those to kind of identify which category the disability falls in. If there's some confusion there, again, I know many that are familiar with this industry are familiar with these codes, but also in the drop down, I do believe that underneath each one they give examples, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 examples of the types of more commonly named disabilities might fall underneath that particular code, if that's helpful. After that, we ask you, I got to go back. We ask you if the disability is permanent or not. In many cases, I think we find most of our individuals that sign up mark yes here. If you mark no, that's fine. It just simply then prompts us to occasionally, recertify with you that yes, you still have that disability, you still qualify, and so forth. The next one, which is a really key important one, is the relationship. So again, we're talking here about the authorized legal representative and what is their authority to manage this account. And there's a couple really good things here that I want to talk about. Currently, and under the original federal law, there was really only 3 primary groups that were allowed to do this. That was the parent or guardian, a conservator, and I do realize sometimes conservator and guardian are kind of interchangeable in terms, and a power of attorney. The Internal Revenue Service, believe it or not, is the federal governing agency that oversees these accounts. And the IRS recently, late last year, came out with final regulations. They were running on temporary ones. They came out with final regulations on suggestions to oversee these accounts. In those final regulations, they added additional categories to this area. And those are spouse, grandparent, sibling, and representative payee. There are some nuances to that, and maybe that could be for another discussion another time, or maybe the question and answer section. But I did want to let you know that unfortunately, those designations are not quite built into the system yet to choose as a selection. But I do want to let you know that by law, they are finalized, and those are actually applicable, positions or titles that you can be in and still be able to open an account. Our team is working very hard to have those incorporated into this enrollment system here in the near future. There could be some questions on how do I deal with that then if I qualify under one of these other ones that aren't technically on the system. And again, we can talk a little bit more about that separately if need be, but wanted to let you know that that is forthcoming. Those are new individuals and or designations that can manage these types of accounts, that can open them and manage them. The last one on this page is a certification. There would be 3 certifications that you need to just check a box on. Obviously, read them first. One is that that the disability did begin prior to age 26. That the individual is indeed in other ways eligible to open this account, and they don't already have another account open because there is a 1 account rule within the program. And then the last one is a larger certification, which just basically says you have the authority to open and manage this and some things of that nature. These certifications, frankly, are important because this is a way that we can get around you providing less documentation. So we don't, if you sign up, for example, under power of attorney, we do not require you to submit to us that power of attorney. If you have a guardianship order, we do not require you to submit to us that guardianship order paperwork. We do the certification where you self-certify with the understanding that you're going to keep that paperwork on hand, and if there's ever any questions, you would be able to produce it and show that you are indeed eligible to do that. So that's step number 3. As we go on to step number 4, this is a know your customer situation. So hopefully some of you have had to deal with these potentially before. Honestly, when I've ever used these systems, it's kind of weird because it's like, oh, how did they know all this information about me? So this is one that will come up. You'll have upwards of 10 minutes to answer 5 questions. And it basically does a public search through various systems and then pulls in a few questions about you to make sure that you can verify yourself. It's kind of like an instant ID verification type of system. So ask you up to 5 questions. You select the correct answer on each of those. I'll give you the super secret insider information. You only have to correctly answer 3 of the 5 to pass. And if you don't pass the first time, it will go through a second time with some different questions. And then if you don't pass the second time, then it will give you a prompt screen saying, please call into our customer service number so we can help, finish through this process. So that's our get to know you sort of ID verification screen. That's step number 4. Well, once we pass that successfully, we go on to number 5, and this is communication preferences. So here, the first one is, do you want to receive things via US mail, or I put email up here. Email basically means you'll receive a notification in email, and you can go onto the system and either view or download the documents. So the first option is to view and download statements and tax forms, online, and receive an email to notify you when they're ready. The next one's to view and download statements, but receive mailed in the mail tax forms. And then the final one is to receive both statements and tax forms through the mail. Do understand that last option, if you're receiving statements and tax forms both through the mail, that is a $10 annual fee that's charged for that feature. But the prior to, if you get them online, or if you have the statements online and the tax forms mailed to you, there is no charge for those particular services. Next, you'll have a chance to select a box if you want to receive updates about the plan and site features, completely optional thing if you want that. And then finally is the mailing address. So this is what I referenced before, where in the mailing address, if you want to keep the same address you'd used for your permanent address, that's fine, and it will pre-populate that. But if you want to add a new address, including a PO box or military type address, those are acceptable in the mailing address section. So you can go ahead and do that if you so wish. Then we'll go on to the last main step in the registration for account process, and this is creating your login. Our system is such that we'll call it the username is always going to be the email address. So you'll re-input the email address you used at the very beginning when you first had that opening screen. You'll create a password. It even has one of these systems that will rate how strong your password is. And like typical conventions, you'll want to use, uppercase and lowercase, numbers and symbols in various combinations, at least 8 or more, and typically 3 out of the 4 are required to be used, to have a strong password. It will reject it if it's not, not strong enough or long enough or whatever. But create your password there and verify it, and then click next. And the final step, so that's really it as far as the registration is concerned. The final step is a review screen. So this is one that will just show you all of the information you just put in. And you'll notice here to the right, it kind of has like almost like a pencil or pen icon in a circle. So that's what you would click on if in that section you needed to make a change. You notice, oops, I input a wrong number or a wrong figure or something. You can click on that little icon to the right, and it will take you back into that section and allow you to amend that before finishing the registration. Once that's done, the final step there also is that we will confirm the email address. So we'll automatically generate an email to the email address that you put. Sort of the subset box kind of to the lower right is what that email looks like. It will be coming from, noreply@someday.com. So also be looking out in case it pops into a spam folder or something. And then right there on the screen is what the email looks like. You just have to click the verify email button in the body and text of the email, and it will verify your email address, and then you're good to go. And once that's verified, you'll get the super green success screen. We're email pals now. Your email's been verified, and that completes the registration process. That is it. Now, the one thing I want to mention quickly here, we're going to go over a couple more steps, but here, if you intend to fund the account either with a check or potentially like you're rolling over an account from a different program to this program, or there's even the possibility to send funds from a college savings plan to the program, anything like that that's outside of a direct transfer from a bank account, this is all you would need to do, and we would, you'd need to send in the check separately. But if you wanted to, or have the check sent, but if you wanted to at this point add a bank account to be able to move funds back and forth from, then there are a few additional steps. So once you then log in for the first time to your account, so this is our fictitious account of Lorraine Hamilton here. When she first logs into her account, there will be this message of finishing account setup. So again, you only need to do that finish account setup step if you're going to be attaching a bank account, which we'll show you here in a few slides. Otherwise, if you mail in a check, it will get there, it will fund the account, and then your account should be fine. But if you wanted to attach a bank account, here's the final 4 steps that you'll need to do. You'll click on the Finish Account Setup. You'll go to the next screen. This will allow you, it's a completely optional step. This will allow you to set a goal if you want to. Sometimes we find it handy, through surveys that have been done in the industry, right, that if people have a goal, that sometimes they're more apt to save towards that goal. The number that's put in here is the full $27,760. That's actually those that are familiar, the limit on what you can put into account is $15,000, but there is an additional $12,760 that can be contributed if an individual is working and earns up to that amount of money. So this is this would be a case where somebody's employed, like the beneficiary, and they're putting their own funds from employment in, and they're maxing out everything. So that would be this 27,760 goal. But again, this is optional. If you don't set it up now, you'll have a chance to set up later, which we'll show you. Just something that might be helpful if you find it helpful. The next one's going to be to go and add a bank account. There's going to be two options here. And the first one is probably the preferred if people are comfortable with it. So this is a system in which some of you may be familiar. There's a company out there called Plaid, and they have a secure sort of instant connection type of system. The one that I've personally used it on outside of an application like this is like Venmo, if anyone ever has an account like that they've set up. So what it does is they have a relationship, Plaid, with like 5,000 to 6,000 banks and other institutions across the country. So when you come into the system this way, it will actually, you'll select what bank you're working with, as long as it's one on the list, and it will give you a secure login screen to that bank. So the example here is Chase, which is a very common bank in our region of the country. And so you put in your username and password, it connects to your Chase account, and then it brings up on the screen, hey, you have this checking and savings at this bank. Which one of these would you like to attach? You select which one you want to attach, continue, it finalizes the system, and then instantaneously that account is now attached and available to transact between. So this is the super fast option, probably preferred for those that are comfortable with it, and it gets around having to do micro deposits or some other kind of verification process. If you're not comfortable with that, or maybe you're with some super small county credit union that's not on the list or something, then we have a manual process that you can do. This would be very similar to what you're used to, where you go in and you add the account holder's name. You would manually put whether it's a checking or savings account by clicking the button. You type in the routing number, type in the account number, and then you can actually also add a nickname to the account. So if you wanted to call it, I'll use Karen since she's on from the ARC, Karen's checking account. You could name it that, right? And so then whenever you'd go into the system to choose that as an option, it would show up as Karen's checking account, and you'd know, okay, this is the one I want to move money, back and forth from. So this would be a manual way that you can do it. It's not as instantaneous. They have to do a little bit of work on the back end with our program manager to get that all set up and established. But usually within a day or so, you're fine to then start transacting on that once they've pushed that through. In addition to that, once you've selected the bank, so let's say you use the Plaid system, you got the account connected directly, and you want to make your initial contribution. So this one is just showing part of the screen, but it will take you to the point in which you can fund the account using the different options that are available, the different investment options. To try to blow this up and make it more viewable, you're only seeing 3 of the 5 options here. You have growth, moderate growth, conservative growth. There's one that's not showing, which is an income option, and then there's a final one called Bank Safe, which is like an FDIC insured savings fund. So you would actually just put in the box the amount to the right, how much you want to put in each of those investment options. Our minimum to open the account for the very first time is $25. You can put as low as $1 each in any of these, but for the first time, just to get the account started, just to create a deposit and balance in the account, we require $25. And at the bottom of this, once you put the dollar amounts in, you'll make sure that the total equals, and then you go to the next, and it will put that transaction in process. So here at the top of this, you'll see today's contribution $100. So in the example we're using, somebody chose to make an initial funding of $100, all to the growth fund. This screen is also optional, where if you wanted to set up recurring contributions, so this again would not be payroll deduction, as Treasurer Fitzpatrick had commented earlier with an employer, but this would be from my own checking or savings account. Every month I'd like to put in X dollars on a certain date. So you can pick the day of the month you want that to come out, what option you want it to go to, how much you want it to go, and set up a recurring contribution from that account. Again, optional. If this is something that you don't want, you can just skip past. And that's it for this particular stage. Once that's happened, you'll review everything that's going on to make sure that all of those selections are what you wanted. And then once that's completed, you're all set and ready to go. And at that point, if you've used the Plaid system to connect the account and chosen those investment options and initial contribution, there will actually be a pending transaction to get that account funded immediately upon that. 2 more slides and then we're done. So 2 more things I wanted to show you real quick. Once this is all complete, or if you finish the account enrollment and just send a check in, and once that's in there, this is what the dashboard looks like when you first log into your account. So the dashboard is just going to be a simple box, a screen summary of the total balance in the account. It even has some investment information, the name of the account holder. If you're managing more than one account, then on this screen you would have this same line where John Doe's listed, but you'd have another one underneath for Jane Doe and another one underneath for whoever. They would all be listed sort of in a series here of all the different accounts. And then whichever one that you wanted to deal with, transact on or look at, you would just click on this box anywhere on the larger point of the box, and it would take you into the dashboard. And so the next one is what the dashboard looks like. And this is one that we're excited about because we think this is very user-friendly, very nice to figure some things out on, and I just want to cover this over a couple minutes. So item number 1, these are kind of set up in tiles. So you have your first tile is your total balance, and you'll see even underneath that you have links where you can view activity or make a transfer. The next one is your contribution history, so how much you've contributed towards the annual maximum this year, thus how much do you have left that you can still contribute, both for standard contributions and able to work contributions. You can set a goal, so if you had previously set a goal through the process we had shown, it would show up here. If you haven't, you can add a goal if that's something you wanted to do. It shows you your investment options selected, so in this case it shows you the growth option and what percentage of those are in stocks and bonds. It also has a performance measurement here, so because those are in financial investments that can change, right? It will show you over time the percentage or how your funds have been performing. You can add a gift page, that's kind of center bottom of the section. This is one we could go into a whole separate conversation about, but you can actually create through this your own unique, essentially gifting website, if you will. And then you can post the link to that out on social media and on a variety of different places and allow family members, other individuals to come to that page and gift you funds through there. And so this is a great way for birthdays and graduations and holidays and different things to be able to give gifts to these account holders without potentially causing any problems, right? And then the final one is for the prepaid card, bottom right. So if you have a prepaid card, this will look a little bit different. There will be links, that it will allow you to fund the card and so forth. But if you don't have one and it's something you would like to sign up for, there is a link there that will take you out to the sign up page for that vendor. This is a separate vendor that runs that card program, and it will take you out to their page to be able to get a card. And that once you get a card, that will be another option to load funds onto the card. It is loadable, and then be able to use that to spend anywhere where Visa is accepted. The only other final thing is you'll notice across the top really quickly, we're on the overview page here. You also have an activities tab, which will give you like transaction histories and so forth. Investments will go in and show you your investment allocations and how you're invested and allow you to change investments if you wanted to. Transfers would be both contributions and withdrawals or on the transfer page. So whichever one you want to do, if you want to bring money in, if you want to send money out, all those options will be there. And then of course, settings, there are things such as, username. Actually, username you can't really change if you want to reset the password or change an email address or change phone number information, things like that. And then finally, this will be the last thing I'll say, then we'll get to question and answers. If you'll notice on this particular page, it may be a little bit harder to see, but up under on the very right top corner, you have this drop down where it says Jane, and it shows almost like a little person icon. If you click on that, it will bring a little drop-down menu, and on that drop-down menu, one of the options is Add Beneficiary. So if you're an individual who is managing more than one account, the way that you would go and add a second account would be to click on that, drop it down, say Add Beneficiary, and then it would just take you through only the portion of understanding the beneficiary's information to add an additional one to this account. And then once you added that beneficiary, getting back to our previous slide, then they would show up here in this list once they're added, and then you could manage multiple beneficiaries at a time. That was a lot of information. At this point, I think we're probably going to go into a question and answer session. I'll be here. I know Matt from your Missouri's office will be here as well, and we're here to answer any particular questions. But hopefully you'll see that it doesn't take a lot of time. I mean, we took maybe about a half hour here, but if you go through it live without all the explanations, 10 minutes or so, you can get through it, get the process done, get the account created, and then once you get in, be able to manage the account very effectively through all the tools that we have. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to the Missouri Treasurer's Office and whoever might be working with, or I don't know if that's Karen, whoever might be working with sort of our question and answer session.
Wonderful. Thank you, Thomas. This was really informational for me, and it really gave me a visual representation to understand how the setup of an account works. And it seems like the features are very user-friendly, and I think that it will be very helpful for those that are viewing to be able to go on and get some able account set up for those individuals that they may be working with or family members to help support. So thank you for this. One thing I do want to remind everyone that we are recording this, so that if you are interested in and would like the recorded version of this to share or to review or even to share with your teams, please let us know. And the treasurer's office can get that to you, and you can kind of help spread the word and share the resource, because I think the walkthrough of the process really makes it a little bit more easier to understand for all of us. So we're going to jump right in and have a couple questions that I'll start off with for either Thomas or Matt. The first one was, if an account moves to closed status, how do I reopen it?
All right, that's it. Did you want to take that one, Matt?
No, I was just going to pass that on to you.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so the interesting thing here is this could be a two-sided question. So the question might be, if they had an account under our old system, under our old program manager that is now transitioned under this new program manager, and maybe under the old one it was closed, and how do we look at it now? So any of those accounts that were deemed closed under the old program manager, as we transition them to the new, should all be opened, or should be in an open status. That's kind of one of the things that we did, just as an overall courtesy to everyone, is just kind of open them up, keep them open there. But if you call customer service, they can also help you, if there's a status where it looks like it's closed and not allowing you in. You can also, definitely send us off an email, and we could look into it if it's something that's troublesome and not seeming to get reconciled very quickly. Also understand too that there is a program rule that if you have an account that has a $0 balance for I believe it's like 90 days, then they might put it in kind of like a closed or dormant status. So we obviously recommend to keep funds in the account and keep it open and operating. But when it goes to that closed status, doesn't mean it's like closed forever. And if you needed to use it, you have to come back in and re-enroll. It's still there. We just have to get it reopened and established for you to log back in, and we can definitely help you with that as needed.
Great. Well, that sounds like it's easy enough to resolve if there's an issue with that. And a second question is, can multiple people manage the account? For example, a guardian?
So one of the main ways, I guess, that multiple people can manage an account, and Thomas, please feel free to fill in if I leave anything out, but maybe something like an entity where an organization can be the primary account, or not account owner, but can be the manager of the account. Multiple people can manage that account, but there has to be one primary owner if the person is a parent or guardian. Now, that parent or guardian can share login and information with their spouse so that they can manage the account as well.
That makes sense. And so a second question there would be, a program supervisor, since the program supervisor does day-to-day managing for an individual in an ISL setting. So would that be something that they would have to have the login shared with them, and they would just share the login of the individual with permission from the guardian?
Thomas, I'm going to pass that one off to you, if that's all right.
Sure. Yes, thanks, Matt. So if I'm understanding the question directly or correctly, and this gets back to the whole item of, if you're like an entity or an organization managing these, we would probably want to work with you on setting up that entity structure, because an entity structure is slightly different, where we can have potentially multiple logins for different users who might be managing different accounts. So as an example, we have some in our state that maybe an organization is represented in 2 different counties. And so they want to set it up so that like they have one representative managing the accounts in one county and a different representative managing accounts in the other county. So because that structure is unique, you can set up different logins for different types of access, also having sort of like a main manager over the top that sees and has access to all of it. So that would get into a case where definitely I'd want you to reach out to us and talk more about the entity structure, because it sounds like that would be very more applicable in this particular case.
Okay, well, and then a follow-up to that, would it be something that the payee would have to give permission for the program supervisor to use the funds on behalf of the individual if they were to use the funds from the account?
Yeah, again, I think on that one, it's probably more a function of your particular office policies and rules as far as who's overseeing, who's given day-to-day operational access, how you want those checks and balances to be. Again, that's another reason why in this entity structure it's really great, because we have a setup where you have a primary agent that can log in and do day-to-day things. You have a secondary agent who only has view-only access, but also can get reports and see things and be able to help with, let's say reconciliations and so forth. Yeah, so that's a very good question, and that would be, I would probably defer that back to your particular organization in understanding what your checks and balances are and how you want that structured as far as how approval needs to happen in order to then, spend funds and do things from the account like that.
But on your end, as far as the account, there's nothing prohibiting a program supervisor from managing funds for an individual in an ISL setting, as long as it's within our program protocol and what we have established.
That's correct. Yeah, we have no, we're sort of agnostic when it comes to that. If you have the authority to do so and set it up that way and want to manage it that way, yeah, perfectly fine. No restrictions there.
Okay. That's great. I'm not seeing any other questions come through, but feel free to drop another question in while I just finish some wrap up information for you all. Again, thank you for participating. This was very insightful to me, and I hope all of you were able to take away some good and useful information as we strive to help individuals with disabilities set up some accounts to really protect their finances and give them some financial stability. And on the screen, you'll see that there is the treasurer's contact information, and they are great, and they are great at customer service. They want to help, and so please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or any further guidance that you may want to work with them on. And as I mentioned, we are recording this, and then you can just request that for me or the treasurer's office. They can assist with that as well. And we are going to be sending out a follow-up survey just for an evaluation of the content and quality of the workshop for us, so we can continue to improve and make it better for future presentations. So be looking for that in your inboxes in your email, and please just it's very brief, just a couple minutes just to give us your feedback and your input on that. So I don't see any other questions have come through at this time, so I will go ahead and let you all go. We're just about 4 minutes over. And again, thank you to the Treasurer's Office and to Thomas for giving us your time and your talents today to help us better understand this valuable program for Missourians with disabilities.